Hello and welcome. Could you please put a plus in the chat box if you can hear me well? Okay, thank you. So we've got a listening class today, and in this class we're going to practice using notes to follow a talk or a lecture. We'll also practice identifying information that we need to complete notes or sentences. And finally, we'll practice recognizing the language of comparison and contrast to predict ideas in a talk. The vocabulary topic of the lesson today is going to be business and work, and we're going to listen to some lectures and talks about types of business in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom. All right, so, well, in the first part, in the lead-in, we're going to listen to lectures talking about different types of business in the UK. And first, we'll listen to the introduction. So please listen to this part and match the type of business with the correct description A, B, or C. So here you've got three types of businesses: sole trader, partnership, and limited liability company. And here there are three descriptions: A, B, and C. So please have a look at them. And now we're going to listen to an introduction, and your task is to match. So it's also important that in the listening test, the recorded instructions will tell you about the speaker and the topic. So if you wish, you can look at the screen. If you wish, you can use your own file. Okay, so let's get started.
Track 42. In last week's lecture, I talked about employment and aspects related to it, including contracts, income tax, and so on. However, people are increasingly looking at other forms of earning a living by working for themselves and being in greater control of their working lives. Today, Dr. Corpus and I are going to talk about three different ways in which people can work for themselves. They can set up a company, set up a partnership, or they can work as a sole trader. There are important legal and financial matters to take into consideration when choosing one of these structures as a way of doing business in the UK. Firstly, I just want to outline the main differences between these three types of business structure, which are to do with tax and registration. Regarding registration, those wanting to set up a limited liability company have to legally register the company with Companies House, the government department responsible for businesses. Limited liability means that if the business fails and the owners owe a lot of money, they only lose the money and goods which are in the business and not their own personal money and goods. This is because the owners of the company are separate from the company itself. On the other hand, a sole trader doesn't need to set up a company. He or she can simply start working without any legal registration. A partnership can be limited or unlimited. An unlimited partnership is just like a sole trader, but with two or more partners. In this situation, each partner shares expenses and also income. A limited liability partnership, or LLP for short, is like a limited company, because it must be legally registered in the same way. So just to summarize, with limited liability companies and limited liability partnerships, the owners and the company are separate in legal terms, but with simple partnerships and sole traders, the business and the owner are not legally separate. The other main difference is to do with money, both with finding money to start your business and with paying tax. For example, it might be difficult to borrow money from the bank if you're a sole trader, but easier if you have a limited company, as banks trust companies more. Regarding tax, Limited companies pay corporation tax, which, unlike income tax, is a tax on business profits, not personal earnings. This is more favorable for companies, as corporation tax is usually less than income tax. On the other hand, with sole traders and partnerships, whether simple partnerships or limited liability partnerships, the owners must pay income tax, which may be higher than corporation tax.
All right, so if you still haven't written your answers, please write them in the chat box now and we'll compare. So for number A, personal and business finances are separate. It is easier to borrow money and there is corporation tax. So this will be limited liability company. So A, the answer is limited liability company. Then number B, so personal and business finances are not separate. There are no shares and there's income tax. So here that's sole trader, right? And then partnership, well, personal and business finances may be or may not be separate. Members own business together and there's income tax. So number C, that's a partnership. Okay, well done. So moving further, let's learn to identify correct notes. When you listen to information to complete notes in the listening test, you need to listen carefully in order to be able to identify and select the correct information. So please look at these notes from A to E and listen to another lecturer talking about the structure, advantages, and disadvantages of being a sole trader. So when you listen, please decide which notes are correct and which are not. So the ones that are wrong, you need to correct them. Please be careful, be attentive, because sometimes it looks like it's correct, but in fact it's not. There are some traps. Okay, so once again, look at the notes, listen to the lecture, and say if the notes are correct or not correct. If they're not correct, please correct them. All right, have a quick look at the notes. Okay, let's get started.
Track 43.
Thank you, Dr. Lethbridge, for your introduction. I'd now like to move on to the details of each type of business structure and discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each, starting with the sole trader. This is simply a person who runs a business alone. On the practical side, there's no need to register with Companies House, which means the sole trader is not legally the same as a registered company. The trader can simply choose any name and start trading without paying any fees. There's no need to register an office, so the trader can even work from home. There are also no legal requirements to submit financial accounts to Companies House. As a result, this is the simplest and most straightforward way to start out in business and work for yourself. Another benefit of being a sole trader is that you are your own boss. You don't have to answer to anybody else. You make your own decisions and you don't have to share your earnings with a partner. However, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything alone. You can also employ or give contracts to other people to do work for you, though of course you need to be aware of regulations regarding employing others. So, these are the desirable aspects of being a sole trader. But there are other matters which need careful consideration. When you're in employment, you are taxed at source, which means your employer takes your tax from your earnings every month and sends it to the tax office, so you don't need to worry about it. However, as a sole trader, you are self-employed, which means you are responsible for what you earn, what you spend, and the tax that you must pay. This means you have to complete an annual tax return. This is a document which you send to the tax office once a year showing what you earn from your business and what you spend in running your business. On the positive side, you're only taxed on your earnings after expenses, such as transport, electricity, office equipment and so on. So if you work from home, you can save tax by declaring some of your use of electricity as necessary for your business. Another consideration is that if you earn over a certain amount, you pay a higher rate of income tax, which is higher than the corporation tax rates that companies pay. You'll also have unlimited liability, which means that if you can't pay your business debts, you may lose your house and car to pay for them, as you are your business. Finally, many sole traders find it difficult to take holidays and breaks from the business and find that they spend far more time working than employed people. The typical traders associated with this type of business structure are skilled manual workers such as builders, plumbers and electricians, or professions in which people usually work alone, such as photographers and writers. However, increasingly these days, with the reduction in long-term employment and job security, sole traders are coming from other professions, such as computer programming and even teaching, especially tutoring. Certainly, being a sole trader is a very useful way of starting out in business by yourself.
All right, so please, if you still haven't, please write in the chat box so which statements you think are correct. So A, B, is it correct or not? And if it's not, then give some commentaries about why it is not correct. Okay, so let's have a look at number A. A sole trader can start a business without registering with Companies House. Okay, so number A, that's correct. That's what she said. Then number B, employing other people is not possible for a sole trader. Okay, well, this is incorrect. This is wrong because it was mentioned that sole traders may employ other people. So is not possible, and it is not correct. It is possible because they may employ other people. So number B is incorrect. Okay, then number C, sole traders must pay tax on their earnings every month. And this is where a lot of, well, from my experience, a lot of candidates make mistakes because they are not attentive enough and they say this is correct, but it's not, because sole traders must pay tax every year, not every month. Okay, so it's a matter of attention. Number D, a sole trader might pay more tax than a company pays. Okay, this is correct. And number E, lately, more people like teachers and computer programmers are becoming sole traders. Okay, and this is correct. All right, good. So a lot of IELTS listening tasks are completion tasks. This is when you have to complete the gaps of notes or sentences. So you may be asked, you may need to complete notes with 1 or 2 words and or a number from the recording. In modern IELTS tests, you can see this if you look at Cambridge Book 15 or Cambridge Book 14 or 13 as well. In most modern IELTS listening tests as well as reading tests, when you have to complete the gaps, they ask you to complete it with 1 word only. This happens in 90% of cases. And about 10% of cases, there's 2 words and or a number, right? Or just 1 word and or a number. So in this exercise, the lecturer is talking about the structure and the advantages and disadvantages of partnerships. So please listen and complete the notes with the correct words or phrases from the box. So accounts, borrow money, contracts, pay debts, and tax. Okay, so please have a look at these five notes, 5 sentences, and then we'll listen. So, and be ready to complete with the words from the box.
Track 44. Thank you, Dr. Corpus. The next form of business structure that I would like to discuss is the partnership. There are 2 kinds of partnership, a simple partnership and a limited liability partnership, or LLP. I'll talk about each of these in turn. Forming a simple partnership is straightforward, like becoming a sole trader, except that you have to agree to work with someone else. A partnership could be between a husband and wife, or two members of the same family, or close friends. For example, a couple might run a catering business, or two car mechanics might leave employed work to set up a partnership together repairing cars. One obvious advantage of this is that if one partner is sick or on holiday, the other partner can carry on the business. And another is that it can be easier for a partnership to borrow money from a bank than it can for a sole trader. Of course, partners usually have an informal agreement to work together, but it's always better to have a formal arrangement to avoid disagreements. As with sole traders, each partner must be registered with the tax office as self-employed and must send in a tax return once a year. In addition, as the partnership is unlimited, all members are responsible for debt, so you and your partners may lose your personal possessions to pay debts if the business fails. The other structure for a partnership is the Limited Liability Partnership, or LLP. This is similar to a simple partnership, as the partners share the income and expenses and also have to pay their own taxes to the tax office, but there are important differences. On the one hand, sole traders and simple partnerships don't have to legally register their businesses. On the other hand, LLPs have to be legally registered with Companies House. This means that at least two of the members are legally responsible for the partnership. They have to make sure that they send accounts to Companies House as well as to the tax office. They also need to send in an annual return, which is a document showing the name, address, and members of the partnership, and any changes. If they don't do this, they may go to prison. So it's important to understand exactly what setting up an LLP means. So why should partners enter into a limited liability partnership? Well, usually, an LLP suits certain types of professionals who provide services, such as accountants, lawyers, consultants, and financial service providers. Another reason may be that partners want to do business with larger organizations who would prefer to give contracts to a registered company or partnership. In any event, an LLP offers the flexibility of being in a simple partnership, but also gives the partners protection so that they lose only the money that they have put into the partnership if it fails. However, if the partners earn a lot of money, they will still pay more tax than the owner of a limited liability company.
Okay, so let's try to check. If you still haven't, please write your answers in the chat box for each number. Write the number and the word or words that you think best fits in the gap. So number one, partnership, it's easier to blah, blah, blah than sole partner. So it's easier to borrow money, right? To get a loan from the bank, to borrow money. Okay, number two, if simple partnership fails, all partners may lose personal possessions to pay debts. Yes, to pay debts. Number three, LLP members must send something to Companies House. Okay, so number three will be accounts. LLP members must send accounts to Companies House. Okay, then number four, LLP better chance of getting contracts, from larger organizations. Then number five, members of partnership may pay more tax than owners of limited liability companies. All right, so number one, borrow money. Number two, pay debts. Three, accounts. Four, contracts. And five, that's tax. All right, but as a rule, you don't have the options. You just need to complete the words from what you hear. So please remember that in listening, you will not hear the same words that you read, but you will hear the same information in the same order. As listening questions always go in order, unlike reading questions. Some of them do not go in order. So you listen and all the questions are in the same order, but these words are paraphrased, okay? So then we're going to do exercise 4. In the listening test, you might need to complete sentences which summarize the information from the listening with 1 or 2 words and/or a number. Now, so the lecturer is now talking about the structure, advantages and disadvantages of limited liability companies. Please listen and complete the sentences. So if you have a task like this at an exam, or if you're taking paper-delivered IELTS, paper-based version, then you can just underline the keywords in your question booklet, in your exam booklet, and then when you listen, it will be easier for you to follow and understand where you are, so you just complete the gaps. If you're taking computer-delivered IELTS, you can also highlight words. There is a special function. You can highlight the keywords that will help you find the correct answer. So what are keywords? Keywords, that's everything except prepositions, conjunctions, pronouns and things like that. And also, if there is a word that is repeated, like limited liability here, limited liability company is of course a keyword here, but it will not help you differentiate between the sentences. So, and as soon as you can hear these keywords, or not exactly these keywords, but their paraphrases, you know, okay, well, that's what the speaker is talking about. And then you complete the gaps. Okay, so please have a quick look at these sentences, and then we're going to listen, and please complete the gaps. Okay, let's listen.
Track 45.
Thank you, Dr. Lethbridge. The last form of business I'd like to talk about is the limited liability company. The owners of a limited liability company are called members or shareholders, as they own shares in the company. A share is a divided up unit or part of the company. All businesses run the risk of failing or going bankrupt. If a business goes bankrupt, it has to close because it owes money and is not able to pay the money back. As I mentioned before, setting up a limited liability company, like an LLP, means that if the company fails or goes bankrupt, the business owners lose only what they have put into the business and not their own personal goods and property. This is the idea of liability, how much a business owes in debt if it can no longer operate and has to close. For example, if a sole trader goes bankrupt, he or she may need to sell his or her own house and possessions in order to pay any debts, because the business is not separate from the owner. With LLPs and limited liability companies, the owners and the businesses are separate, so property and goods owned by the business can be sold to pay debts, but not property and goods personally owned by the members or company shareholders. Just as with LLPs, limited liability companies, or limited companies for short, must be legally registered with Companies House. This means they must have a registered address where all the company documents and records must be kept. As with LLPs, accounts and annual returns must be submitted every year so that anyone can have a look at the company's finances before doing business with it. The level of administration is higher than with other business structures, and you need to have a managing director and at least one shareholder. In terms of paying tax, the company has to pay corporation tax on its profits, which is far less than income tax on large amounts, especially over around £50,000. However, you also have to pay income tax on any money you take as a salary from your company. As with the other business structures, the company tax assessment must be submitted to the tax office, but for corporation tax rather than income tax. The shareholders also have to submit their own personal tax assessments separately. As we've already mentioned, the company owners must also submit accounts to Companies House. This can all be quite complicated, so it's a good idea to get professional help and advice from an accountant. It's important to remember that running a limited company is more complex than being a sole trader, so it's important to do careful research and consider your situation before deciding which type of business to run. In any case, you could start as a sole trader and, if business is doing well, turn your business into a limited company at a later date.
Okay, great. So, let's check the answers. In number 1, shareholders in a limited liability company do not lose their something or property to pay debts because liability is limited to the business. Okay, so in the listening, she said personal goods or property. So number 1, the answer is personal goods. Then number 2, a limited company must have a registered address where the company keeps its something and something. The answers are documents and records. Yes, keeps its documents and records. The shareholders must pay on any money that they take out of the company as a salary. Okay, so number 3, that's income tax. Must pay income tax. Number 3, the answer is income tax. And number 4, for many people who think about setting up a business, it is a good idea to start as a sole trader, number 4, as a sole trader, and form a limited company later. Okay, good. So, well done. Now, let's also practice identifying comparisons and contrasts. It is important to understand when a speaker is making comparisons and contrasts, as it can help you predict and choose the correct information to answer questions. In the listening test, you may need to complete notes which summarize the information in the recording and show how the different points are connected. Okay? So in this lecture, the lecturer is discussing the advantages and disadvantages of the different business structures using various expressions to compare and contrast them. Listen and use the words and phrases in the box to complete the notes. So here you have words, however, similarly, the negative side, the other hand, the same is true. And there are 5 gaps here. So it's a good idea to try to use your own file. If you want to scroll up and down, okay, I'll just make it like that. Okay, have a quick look. Okay, so let's start.
Track 46. So, let me summarize the differences and similarities between each business structure. On the one hand, it's fairly simple and inexpensive to set up as a sole trader. You don't have to worry about lots of administration and financial organization, and you can keep total control of your business and decision-making. On the other hand, you may end up paying more in tax than you would as a limited company. You are personally responsible for your debts and losses, and it might be more difficult to get valuable contracts if your business does not have limited liability. With regard to partnerships, there are 2 kinds: simple partnerships and LLPs. In comparison with sole traders, partnerships have the benefit of more people to plan and make decisions. It's easier to take care of the business when one partner is not able to take an active part, and it can also be easier to borrow money than for a sole trader. On the negative side, liability is shared among the partners, and having more than one owner can make things more complicated when there are disagreements or if the business needs to be brought to a close. One other difference between sole traders and partnerships is that the partners need to trust each other. If a partnership has serious money problems, one partner may leave the other to deal with the debts. Clearly, this is not a problem for sole traders. One similarity between partnerships and sole traders, though, is to do with tax. The sole trader must submit a yearly income tax assessment to the tax office. The same is true of partnerships, as members are treated individually for this purpose. When we compare simple partnerships with LLPs, we find various differences. For example, LLPs are legally required to submit their accounts and annual returns to Companies House. This is not something that is required for simple partnerships. Another difference is to do with debt. In an LLP, the partner's personal possessions and property are protected. In a simple partnership, however, like sole traders, the members are personally responsible for any business debts. Finally, limited liability companies have two main advantages over simple partnerships and sole traders. This type of structure limits the financial liabilities of the owners to business losses and not personal losses. And it can save money, as corporation tax is generally lower than income tax. On the other hand, there are a lot more administrative and legal requirements. Company accounts and an annual return must be sent to Companies House. Similarly, there is a legal requirement to keep company records at the registered address.
Okay, so let's have a look. Number one. So there are two options. So you can say on the negative side or on the other hand, and one of them will be used in number one, and number one will be used in number two. So according to this lecture, according to the logic of this lecture, number one would be on the other hand, and here it would be number two on the negative side, right? So number one on the one hand, number two on the negative side, right? Then number three, the same is true of partnerships as sole traders. Okay, it's regarding taxes, it's the same. Then, so the same is true. Number four, however, members are personally responsible for business debts. That's number four. And number five is similarly. So annual return and company accounts must be sent to Companies House. And similarly, company records must be kept at the registered address. All right, good. So, and finally, let's sum it all up. Also, please pay attention to your spelling. So your spelling should be correct. If you misspell something, it's considered to be a mistake. You don't get a point for a correct answer that is spelled incorrectly. So please listen to the lecturer presenting 3 different case studies to illustrate each business type that we listened about today. And complete the notes with information from the listening. So write 2 words or 1 word and or a number in each gap. Okay, so it can be 1 word and a number, or 2 words. So there are 6 gaps. Please have a look at them. All right, now let's listen.
Track 47.
To conclude this lecture, I'd like to present 3 case studies to show the different structures in action. I'll present each case, briefly discuss the possibilities, and recommend the most suitable structure. Firstly, there's the case of Sanjay and Tanya, a couple who want to set up a catering service, delivering food to businesses. The idea is to take orders from businesses on a daily basis and prepare food for delivery during the business day. They aim to target businesses in their local area to begin with, and then further afield as they expand. Their plans include a website to display their daily international menus and to provide an online service for customers to order and check when the food will be delivered. Clearly, it's not suitable to be sole traders, but they could organise themselves as a partnership or a limited company. It depends partly on how much money they can raise and how many people they intend to employ to prepare and deliver the orders. It might be best for them to start as an LLP so that they can get funding more easily than if they were a simple partnership. They could start small and build from there. They could hand out contracts to other companies for some of their services, particularly for the website and delivery, if they intend to prepare the food themselves. Alternatively, they could set up a limited liability company if they expect to grow quickly and want to keep every aspect of their business in-house, employing staff directly. However, I would say the LLP model would work better here, giving them more time to focus on growing the business rather than dealing with a lot of administration from the start. Melissa and Jane have an idea for a website design service. They both studied software engineering at university, and so they are both well skilled in their field. They have both worked as designers for major organisations, so they have a good understanding of what's involved in running such a business. Melissa has also taken a master's degree in business administration, so she's confident about her skills as a businesswoman. They've managed to save over £3,000 to rent office space and £10,000 to buy equipment to run their business. The best option for them would be to register a limited company and start trading straight away, as they have a good level of knowledge and experience which will benefit them. They don't intend to employ anyone immediately, but the option is there if they need to in the future. An alternative would be for them to start as a simple partnership and expand from there, seeing how their work grows and then maybe setting up a limited liability company in the future. Or they could make their partnership a limited one. But if they are confident in themselves, there's nothing to stop them setting up a limited company immediately. Barry is a motorbike enthusiast with many years of experience riding bikes. He's been working for a courier company delivering letters and parcels for over 5 years now and thinks that he'd do better if he worked for himself. The courier company provided him with his work bike and took care of maintenance and repairs, so if he works for himself, he'll have to buy his own bike for work and take care of it himself. This isn't a problem for him, as he has 3 bikes for his own use already. He knows that he can build up regular clients from his contacts, but he's not sure if working as a sole trader is the best thing for him, as he's never been self-employed before. Another possibility would be to set up a limited company with a family member. This person wouldn't take an active part in the business. They would be known as a sleeping partner. Finally, he could also choose to work in a partnership with other riders who are thinking of leaving the company, but he's not sure if that arrangement would last. On balance, the best option for him would be to start off as a sole trader with his own work bike and do that for a year or 2 to see how well it went, and then make a decision about whether to set up a limited company in the future.
All right, so let's have a look. Number 1, Sanjay and Tanya plan to set up business to provide. So it's to provide food to businesses, to provide food to businesses. So number 2, better to set up a knowledge company if employ their own staff. Sorry. Yes, so of course it's not a limited liability company, right? Or you can just say a limited company if employ their own staff. right? So better to set up a limited company if you employ their own staff. Or you can say limited liability, 1 or 2 words, both of them are correct. So yes. Number 3, intend to spend. Then here you would expect a price, right? So that's or amount of money, and that's £10,000 on equipment to use in the business. All right. So number 4, limited company, best as have enough. Yes, and here the answer is knowledge and experience to be successful. Right. Number 4, knowledge and experience. Then number 5, could use one of his, and here you can say bikes or motorbikes, or 3 motorbikes or own motorbikes, because it was mentioned twice, and any answer would be correct. 3 bikes, 3 motorbikes, own bikes, own motorbikes. Right. Then could set up as sole trader or start a limited company with relative as sleeping partner. So sleeping partner, this is not somebody who you sleep with, but this is a partner in a company. It's a term. It's a partner in a company who doesn't take active part in the management, but maybe this person provides some of the money. So in American English, you call this a silent partner also. All right. So, well, thank you all for participation. I think we've done a great job, and hope to see you in one of the next classes. So for those who are interested, on Tuesday we're starting IELTS listening course. It's going to run from Monday to Friday every day at 7 p.m. And there are going to be 20 lessons in the total. We're going to cover everything, every sub-skill that is necessary to succeed in the IELTS listening test. So if you're interested, until Sunday, until today, 11:59 p.m., there is a 50% discount. If you want to join the course, then just use the promo code listening50, and you get a 50% discount. It's valid only until midnight, right? Because tomorrow the price is going to be higher. All right, and hope to see you there.